It's
not here, and Margot is not here.
just cancel them out. Okay. Well, good morning, all. My name is Thompson McDonald. I'm chair of the Enmax Corporation Board of Directors. We welcome members of City Council acting this morning in their capacity as the shareholder of Enmax. Present with us today are Mayor Dave Bronconnier, Alderman Gord Lowe, Alderman Bob Hawksworth, Alderman Joe Connolly, Alderman Drew Farrell, Alderman Joe Ceci, Alderman Brian Pincott, Alderman Jim Stevenson, and Alderman Diane Colley-Urquhart. I'd like to welcome my colleagues on the Enmax Corporation Board. With us today are Mr. Francis Leong, Ms. Sarah Morgan-Sylvester, Dr. Robert Page, and Mr. Gary Holden, who's the President and CEO of Enmax Corporation. Also in attendance is the Enmax executive team. They are Mr. David Halford, EVP, meaning Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Al Bacanani, EVP Fuel Supply, Ms. Joan Bjarnason, Vice President Marketing, Mr. Robert Hemstock, EVP Regulatory and Legal Services, Ms. Erin Kurchina, who's Vice President Human Resources, Mr. Rick Ellers is VP Transmission and Distribution Services, Mr. Terry Tyler is EVP Strategic Initiatives and Chief Information Officer, and Ms. Leanne Lickness is our Corporate Secretary sitting beside me and making me look good. This morning's meeting will deal with the approval of the 2008 financial statements, the appointment of the external auditors, and the election of directors. Opportunity will be provided for members of the public to ask questions during the informal portion of the meeting. I now call this annual meeting of the shareholder of Enmax Corporation to order. I'm advised by the Secretary of the Corporation that notice of this meeting has been given to the shareholder, to each director, and to the auditors of the Corporation in accordance with the amended and restated bylaw. I'm also advised that a quorum exists for this meeting, and I therefore call it to order. The first item of business is the 2008 audited financial statements and annual report. The 2008 financial statements were audited by the firm of Deloitte & Touche. The annual report with audited financial statements, auditor's report, and statutory disclosure of directors and employees' remuneration were reviewed by Enmax Audit and Finance Committee and were approved for submission to the shareholder by the Enmax Corporation Board of Directors on March 17. This material is in your meeting materials under tab 2. Before I call for a motion on the resolution before you, are there questions? There being no further questions, may I please have a motion to move the resolution before you? We'll have Alderman Lowe, thank you. Seconded by Alderman Hawksworth, thank you. Your Worship, would you please call a preliminary vote on this resolution?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would request a preliminary vote on the following resolution that the shareholder of Enmax Corporation receive the 2008 annual financial report and the accompanied audited financial statements, the auditor's report, and the statutory disclosure of directors' and employees' remuneration for information. All in favor? Are there any opposed to the resolution? It's carried. Mr. Chairman, based upon the preliminary votes of the resolution, as shareholder representative, I vote in favor of the resolution as attached.
Thank you, sir. The next order of business is the approval for the appointment of the external auditor. This material is under tab 3 in your meeting binders. This matter was reviewed by the Audit and Finance Committee and Board of Directors in March, and we are recommending the appointment of Deloitte & Touche as auditors for Enmax Corporation. The Board of Directors is asking for authorization to fix the remuneration of Deloitte & Touche for audit work associated with the 2009 fiscal year. Are there questions before we proceed? There being none, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. May I please have a motion on the resolution, members of council, request for a preliminary vote on the appointment of Deloitte Touche LLP as auditors for the Enmax Corporation for the 2009 fiscal year and authorize the Board of Directors to fix the remuneration for Deloitte & Touche LLP for the audit work and associated work for 2009.
Moved by Alderman Colley-Urquhart, seconded by Alderman Hawksworth. Thank you very much.
Are there any opposed, Mr. Chairman? Thank you. Based upon the preliminary vote, Mr. Chairman, I, as shareholder representative, vote in favor of the appointment and the shareholder resolution for the appointment of said auditor.
Thank you. A resolution is before you related to the election of directors. The Board of Directors of Enmax Corporation is recommending the re-election of the current 13 directors. This recommendation is the result of a thorough review of the company's culture and strategic direction, an analysis of the skills currently represented on the Enmax Corporation Board of Directors, and the skills required on the board to support Enmax future directions. Do shareholders have questions? There's being none, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would request a preliminary
Excuse me,
vote.
Alderman Chabot.
Sorry, Alderman Chabot.
Oops, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So insofar as the members of council appointed to this board, is this the point at which members of council would then nominate for appointments to this board?
That's a good question. Yes, I believe that any director can be nominated for any of the positions can be open, and nominations from the floor are appropriate.
Okay. Well, I was kind of hoping to get an opportunity to be represented on this board. I guess self-appointment or self-nomination isn't an option at this point?
It's an unusual matter, so I'll just consider the rules. I think that any nomination can be received from the floor, including an individual can nominate himself.
Okay. Well, I'd certainly like to put my name forward as a potential candidate.
Very good. So, ladies and gentlemen, shareholder representatives, we will proceed with an election vis-a-vis the membership on the board. Mr. Mayor, I think I'll ask you to craft this.
Thank you. As shareholder representatives, members of council, I wonder if I could have a motion for the resolution to confirm the reappointment of the following directors until the next annual meeting of the corporation: Mr. Cliff Friars, Mr. Mike Harris, Mr. Gary Holden, or until he no longer holds the office of president of the corporation, Mr. Donald Lenz, Mr. Francis Leong, Mr. Thompson MacDonald, Mr. Ian McGregor, Mr. Greg Melchin, Ms. Margot McAuliffe, Ms. Sarah Morgan Sylvester, and Dr. Robert Page. If we could deal with that first, shareholder representatives, and then I'll deal with the members of council appointments second. Moved by Alderman Ceci, seconded by Alderman Conley. Mr. Chairman, members of council, I recall a request for a preliminary vote on the appointment of those following directors until the next annual general meeting. On the preliminary vote of the resolution, are we agreed? Are there any opposed? It's carried. Mr. Chairman, based upon the preliminary vote, I, as shareholder representative, vote in favor of the resolution to appoint until the next annual general meeting Mr. Cliff Friars, Mr. Mike Harris, Mr. Gary Holden, or until he no longer holds the office of President and CEO of the corporation, Mr. Donald Lenz, Mr. Francis Leong, Mr. Thompson MacDonald, Mr. Ian McGregor, Mr. Greg Melchin, Ms. Margot McAuliffe, Ms. Sarah Morgan Sylvester, and Dr. Robert Page. Mr. Chairman, I would suggest then for the following two positions that we have nominations for those. Members of council, as a reminder, there are two positions available. The Board of Directors of Enmax Corporation have put forward through the committee the reappointment of Alderman Bob Hawksworth and the reappointment of Alderman Gordon Lowe. Mr. Chairman, I think we call for further nominations.
Okay, and are there further nominations? We have the nomination of Alderman Chabot as well. So I think I'll call for your vote on each of the three individuals. Would that be satisfactory to you, sir?
Thank you. Members of council, or shareholder representatives, I'll ask for a show of hands with the three nominees, or do you wish are we set for? Oh, we do have a ballot, members of council. Thank you. Madam Secretary, if I could ask for the ballots to be distributed. Members of council, there are nominees for three individuals: Alderman Gord Lowe, Alderman Andre Chabot and Alderman Bob Hawksworth. Only 2 names, please, out of the 3 nominees. Mr. Chairman, if you could ask if there are any further nominees.
I did that already, sir. Thank you. Yep. Nominations are closed. If it's all right, while we conduct the vote, I think we might go to the next item on the agenda, and we'll come back to the results of the vote when we have them. Thank you very much. And so we have a little bit of a wrinkle. We're about to close the formal portion of the meeting, but we can't do that because we haven't got the board done yet.
Just inform McIver about the vote.
Well, I think we'll just wait for a moment then, because I don't want the CEO's presentation to be part of the thing. Mr. Mayor, the ballot reveals that Alderman Lowe and Hawksworth are selected by the shareholder representatives.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for those results. Based upon the secret ballot, as shareholder representative, Mr. Chairman, I vote in favor of the appointment of Mr. Bob Hawksworth until the next annual meeting of the corporation or until he no longer holds office of Alderman for Ward 4 of the City of Calgary. Likewise, Mr. Chairman, I vote in favor of the reappointment of Alderman Gord Lowe until the next annual meeting or until he no longer holds the office of Alderman for the City of Calgary.
Thank you. This concludes the formal portion of our meeting. May I please have a motion to terminate the formal annual shareholder meeting and move to the informal meeting? Thank you, Alderman Chabot. Seconded by Alderman Stevenson. Mr. Mayor.
Based upon that, Mr. Chairman, I move that the formal presentation of the meeting and the 2008 annual report or annual meeting is therefore concluded.
Thank you, sir. I now call upon Gary Holden, our CEO of Enmax, who will provide you with a summary of Enmax accomplishments for the year 2008. Mr. Holden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is this mic on? Can you hear me in the back?
Put a button.
No, they've got me on a wireless one here. Good morning, everybody. I'd like to kick off my presentation with a little trivia matter. This is my 4th year of being CEO and president today. So thank you. I've enjoyed it thoroughly, and your leadership has been fantastic as we've transformed this company. I want to spend a few minutes talking about our investments and the growth in the company, but I also want to talk a little bit about the future that we see for Enmax. The investment, of course, as you have been able to follow year after year, has been growing. We've been adding assets to our portfolio to compete in the electricity market, and we've been growing our customer base quite dramatically. We hit in 2008 a record revenue of $2.6 billion, which was a 26% increase over 2007. That had a commensurate net earnings increase of 28% as well. The return on equity has also hit a new high, and our return on assets have increased to 6.1% overall, which is an excellent result for any utility company in North America. The revenue in 2005 was 1.3%. Ramping up to our 2008 result is a compounded annual increase of 25% per year. The earnings during that same time frame have also increased on a compounding basis 28% per year. And we expect, given the conditions in the marketplace being a little bit tougher due to the worldwide economic difficulties that are out there, to perhaps not continue at this pace in 2009, although the addition of some of our assets that we added in 2008, a new wind farm at Kettle Hills, for example, and the acquisition of the CEC plant, that we will experience some growth. We've invested a significant amount of capital in the industry in the effort of adding more electricity to the market and in the effort of increasing our market share. In 2007, or the comparative between 2008 and 2007 was a 33% increase, but we've been averaging a consistent, steady capital investment in the $200 to $400 million range, depending on the opportunities that present themselves. We think that 2009 will continue our growth. We're adding the Crossfield Power Station in Crossfield, Alberta, and we are beginning the addition of our Shepherd Power Station in East Calgary, and the District Energy Plant in downtown Calgary continues to develop as the construction cycle there goes right through the year. We've been successful in maintaining industry-leading reliability. The addition of technology through distributed automation, as well as continuous improvement in our reliability practices, have allowed us to maintain an excellent reliability record in 2008. We've had some success in helping shape policy, The greenhouse gas regime in Canada is starting to come to a point where the industry and the federal government are reaching an agreement, and the realistic possibility now that we will see a transformation of our existing coal fleet here in Alberta to new technology is starting to take shape, and under the leadership of Jim Prentice, we're very, very happy to see that the coal plant fleet will begin to be replaced with technology very much like the technology we're putting in downtown Calgary, very much like the technology we'll be putting in East Calgary at the Shepherd facility. We've increased our customer base. We now serve 649,000 customers in Alberta, and we intend to lead the way in this province in bringing advanced energy technology such as smart metering to the marketplace. We're working towards a future where households can generate their own power through combined heat and power plants, and we've started that process by allowing our own employees to participate in those programs first. We've also been taking our employees to a new level in leadership in the community, asking them all to contribute to lowering the company's environmental footprint, become ambassadors for environmental initiatives, and be the first in Calgary to install hot water solar systems, solar photovoltaic panels on their roofs, and even micro wind turbines. We're maintaining our own supply of energy, as I mentioned earlier, with the addition of district energy in downtown Calgary. We're very excited about the possibility of having a large percentage of the buildings in Calgary, particularly the east part of downtown, taking waste heat from electricity generation and using it as a substitute for the boiler technology that they would have picked in the past. What you're seeing here is some pictures of the construction site on 9th Avenue and 4th Street, and an artist rendering now of what the district energy plant will look, the district energy distribution center in downtown will look like when it's finally completed next year. The Crossfield Energy Center is also under construction. We're advancing it started out as a greenfield site near Crossfield, and is slowly being transformed into a high-efficiency peaking plant. This facility will provide power at the peak periods in Calgary and will contribute to Alberta's overall electricity system by reducing the need for increases in transmission construction from the north part of the province. The Shepherd Energy Center, which I mentioned earlier, is an 800 megawatt power plant in the middle of a brand new industrial heartland in the Calgary region, and the waste heat from this plant would also be available for industrial expansion near this facility. It will be the most efficient facility in Alberta, the most efficient thermal facility in Alberta, and will represent the prototype for the new power plants that will come into Alberta as the current coal fleet retires. Of course, we've been supplying Calgary now for a number of years from the Calgary Energy Center, and we added that fleet to our ownership in 2008, and are happy to say it's providing an excellent economic proposition for the company, and of course continuing our desire to build up our fleet of supply in this region. This is a picture of the Calgary Energy Center in operation. In 2008, we continued to expand our renewable energy fleet with the acquisition of the Kettle Hills wind power facility, and I'm very, very pleased to say that it was the acquisition of this facility that have now allowed us to work with the City Council and bring this city to the point where by about 2012, 100% of the electricity used by the city through its own facilities, through the LRT, all of the municipal buildings will be powered with green power. And we're very delighted to be a part of that equation, making Calgary the first city in North America to do such a thing. Here's a picture of the Kettle Hills Wind Farm in southern Alberta. Our long-term vision that many of you have seen before is a vision where the city would have a number of high-efficiency power plants, the ability to capture the waste heat from those power plants and make it commercially available as a substitute for boiler heat for buildings, institutions, industrial facilities, and of course, at the end of the day, maybe even residences. We also see more wind power and solar power being added to the city as we start to exploit the roof capacity that this city has and bring the increasingly more economic solar energy to our marketplace. You'll also see us make announcements that start the advancement of the smart grid, the ability to allow households and small businesses to generate their own electricity, trade that electricity with us as the distribution company and the utility, and facilitate the advancement of electric cars into the future. This is very much the picture we see of the future, where the utility and the customer work in partnership to bring a greener environment and a smarter grid to the game. On another note, we continue to participate quite heavily in the community. We've started to add new programs. The picture you see here are of some children who are participating in our Gen program, which is designed to allow children to explore alternative energy, understand the difference between the current thermal technologies and the ones that are coming down the road, and allow them to see the advantages as they grow into the community and are able to make choices in that regard. We're also helping very much to bring new technology and a greener footprint to the Calgary Zoo in our assistance of in building the new conservatory at the zoo. If you get a chance to go to the zoo, you'll be able to see it under construction today and in full operation by the spring of next year. And in that building will be examples of all of the new technology that we expect the marketplace to have access to: wind generation, solar power, and micro combined heat and power units as well. Our brand is continuing to build in Alberta and elsewhere. We've been recognized as one of Canada's greenest employers in 2009. We were named to Alberta's list of top 40 employers. And of course, you'll be able to read all about those achievements and milestones in our corporate responsibility report, which is available online at enmax.com/cr. And I encourage you very much to have a look at that. It really does tell an excellent story and makes us all very proud to be a part of this company. Mr. Chair, I would now conclude my remarks and turn it over to the floor for questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Holden. I'll ask the shareholder representatives first if they have questions of Mr. Holden or anyone else.
Thank you. A few little ones. On the District Energy Center downtown, is there, and if it's too early, just say so, I'm okay with that, but what do we have an estimate on the energy, the savings in both dollars and pollutants that will bring to the city?
We originally, when proposing the project, went to both the federal, the provincial, and of course the municipal governments for some CAMRIF funding to assist this project. And in that CAMRIF application, we made a commitment to save a minimum of 300,000 tons of CO2. I'm happy to say that when the project is fully completed, we will probably be doubling that number. We've discovered in the development of the project that there was much greater capacity available to us in this project. The market was much more willing to think about district energy, and we're finding that we're seeing a lot of growth into the future on those numbers as well.
Okay. I've had a few complaints, so I'm glad to see that you're going to try to bring on the smart grid system. I have complaints from people that actually want to participate and can't yet. So when will those complaints stop? I.e., when can people do it?
Well, I can't guarantee that complaints will stop completely.
No, okay, none of us can, okay.
But I will say this, in 2008, the early part of 2008, we were successful in leading a few industry participants in getting the provincial government to agree with legislation that effectively compels the distribution utilities to buy back power from anybody who wants to generate power on their own site. And so that was really the first step. We've been examining technology now for a while, and it's a very fluid technological environment. There's breakthroughs just about every 6 months in the smart grid world. But we do now feel we're ready to go ahead, and we'll be making application with the AUC for smart metering this year.
And which technology should I tell people is the one that they should actually look at and investing in? There's wind, there's solar,
In terms of the distributed generation
it's
technology?
distributed generation.
Well, we like to tell our customers that every house is different. Solar energy will work on houses with the right kind of orientation and taking advantage of the position of the sun. There will be some homes in Calgary that have a significant wind load, and we've started to demonstrate some of the micro wind technologies at a couple of schools here in town, and we see homes picking up on that. Particularly if you have an acreage or a farm in the periphery of the city as well. And microtechnology that takes waste heat from boilers in homes would also be very popular. In fact, my own home is operating as a cogeneration facility now. So we're on the beginning of what I think is going to be known in the future as a technological revolution, and it's going to take some time. But over the next decade, we'll be bringing those technologies, and hopefully homes will pick one, two, or maybe even all three of those technologies in the future.
Okay. So I think you just told me in an extremely polite way I asked the wrong question. So I think the right question might be, where would people go for information and reference on that stuff?
We'll be rolling out a campaign after our employee campaign is completed, and we feel comfortable with our business processes to install and bill for these technologies. We'll be rolling out a campaign. What I would recommend is to check out our website. Our website will have a great deal of information on this process, and over the next year, and the programs will be fleshed out over that period of time.
Okay.
So.
And billing issues, are we past those now? We'll never be entirely past, because when you're doing business, you have problems, and now and again, I understand that, but there were a little bit extraordinary things in recent months. But are we?
Yeah,
we sorted them out?
We had some issues over the winter with some of our customers getting a gas bill that was delayed a month as we improved our billing system. I believe we've cleaned up those issues, and would be now in a business as usual mode on that front.
Okay, and I will say I would congratulate you for managing to make money in this business. So, and those are my questions for now, Your Worship.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Chabot.
Well, first of all, congratulations, Mr. Holden, on a recent Consumer Choice Award
Thank you.
recognition and award. Couple of questions. We had a meeting with the Utilities Consumer Advocate on a document that is a public document, and they were talking about how the actual time-based smart metering thing has kind of been put on hold right now, as you said, because of, I guess, emerging technologies. Do you see that coming to some sort of a conclusion anytime soon? Rick sort of asked the question, or Alderman McIver.
Yeah, there is a bit of a confusion there. The work that's being done by the provincial government right at the moment is to make an attempt to marry up the legislation and any legislative changes that might be required for a full-fledged implementation of smart metering That, in our view, that does not at all impact our ability to work with the regulator to implement a program for Calgary. It should be noted that the customers in the Fortis area are starting to also see smart metering. They started implementing smart metering in 2008. And so what's going on with the DOE and the government, what's going on in the companies, don't necessarily have to be sequential. But what they have to do is, at the end of the day, comply with regulation. And we would obviously do that in our implementation.
Okay, so our business plan currently doesn't necessarily reflect the costs of implementing that, or do they?
We fully expect that the AUC will hear our costs, and that the benefits that we would put forward would exceed the cost, and we feel very strongly that they'll like our proposal and allow us to move forward.
Which will include time-based billing and metering, so, and crediting. So if somebody's putting back into the grid, it's going to be time-based.
That's correct.
And it's usually an hour behind. How are we going to do it real time, or are we going to be basing it on the same kind of format that's being...
Well, the regulations will be very specific that the metering technology must be able to track the inflows and outflows of electricity in real time and bill accordingly.
You had mentioned about residential sector looking at possible wind power, and I know that I think it was a couple of years ago we got an individual that came forward with a vertical shaft type options. Have you had a chance to explore that technology much?
We have, and it'll be evaluated along with the other technologies that we're looking at.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think those are all my questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Alderman Ceci.
Thank you, Gary, and all the Enmax folks. On micro wind turbines, do you see a day when there might be the use of available city lands for micro wind turbine energy fields, and is a regulatory process there for other companies to be involved in that?
First of all, the regulatory process does tend to get specific on the different kinds of technologies, and I believe that some technologies will have an advantage over others given their height or configuration. But generally, participants, given the legislation that was passed in 2008 that would compel the distribution companies like ourselves to buy back energy from any site that's connected to our grid, we believe that third-party companies will absolutely be entering the market and making offers to customers. We don't expect at all to be the only provider. We think it will be in the interest of our shareholder and in the interest of our customer to see us participate, but we absolutely think the market will be much better served with a number of different suppliers, and in fact that could go on right now.
Sorry, Mr. Holland, there was one other question I had for you. In the report, it talks about how you're looking at leasing some of the equipment, right? Solar, wind, or Whisper. Would that include in the costs actual hookup into the system, or is that going to be provided by a third party?
Yeah, the business model we anticipate using for the hookup and installation is still being developed. Okay. We think there are a number of excellent contractors in Calgary that could really help us deploy a lot of technology quickly and would be pursuing that avenue. But the key idea would be all of the costs of putting that equipment in place would be put on an Enmax bill and allow for the person to pay for it over time, so they didn't need to come up with the capital up front.
Thank you. That's the answer I was looking for. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no indication from any of the other shareholder representatives that they have questions. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to express to you and, of course, the board members that are joining us and the management team what an excellent job you have done on behalf of the citizens of Calgary as the shareholders for 2008. Excellent financial performance, meeting all of your targets and exceeding them in many, many areas. So, Mr. Holden, to you and the management team, Mr. McDonald, on behalf of my shareholder colleagues, congratulations and thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, it's that time right now. You may approach the microphone, ask a question, and we'll do our best to answer it. Yeah, well, you keep not asking questions. You're probably going to get cut off again.
I was cut out by Alderman Duffer.
I don't think so. It was me, but carry on. Have you got a question?
Yes. Yes, my name is Oscar Feck. Just looking at this statement, total revenue $2,600,000,000, expenses $2,091,000,000, and there's other expenses. Let's see, operating margin. I can go on, but in reality, when you have $2 billion income, how can you spend that much money to keep it up? Plus, you have so many other expenses. Plus, when I get the bill in the mail, you have so many extras added. That pays for all the billing and everything. It seems like
You have asked a question. Why don't you just let it go to that, and we'll get you an answer.
Yeah,
No.
let me take a chance.
no.
Was your
No,
question how can we spend so much money relative to the revenue?
That's one question. I want to get it a couple.
You want me to answer that one first? And
Sure,
then?
please.
Okay. Well, the key issue in our industry is we tend to move a lot of other fuels and other forms of energy through wire to get you the energy to your house. And so in order to generate the electricity at a power plant, you have to buy fuel. And that fuel, as you know, is a large volume. And so a big portion of our expenses is simply the input costs to make the power and the product that you use in your home. And the margin between those expenses and the revenue, of course, is the source of profit, which we then use to invest further in the industry.
That was my second question. Enmax, but I just want to make a comment first. Alderman Rick McIver laughed at me to what I asked, but that's okay. What goes around comes around. Anyway, my next question is, Enmax Power is buying up so many windmills, creating so many plants, building so many plants, solar, wind power. Isn't that where the monies are going? At least $1 billion a year. It's called create an illusion and it doesn't work. And you're buying up your own companies back and forth. That's what it seems like to me. Why are we doing that? At least $1 billion a year should be going to the taxpayers, not blow monies elsewhere.
Well,
am I wrong? Or?
Yeah, you are. The thing that's going on, of course, is we're in a growing province. So the city's growing rapidly. We spend well over $100 million a year just putting more wire in the ground as houses are added and buildings are added. So it's a constant process. It'll go on for the rest of our living lives, where we take capital through the margins we get on energy and reinvest it back in the system to grow the society. And that's just the business that we're in.
But we've got to be cautious how we handle it. We can't keep buying companies and they fold, and then you build new plants and some fold or whatever. We buy back our own companies through Enmax.
Excuse me, Mr. Holden, there was no question there. So, and we're not here to debate the business strategy of the company. We're here to answer your questions. We've answered 2 of them so far, but stay to the business of asking questions, please. Does anyone else in the public have a question to ask?
Question over there.
Sir.
Good morning. My name's Mel Techmeyer. I'm a citizen of Calgary and a customer of Enmax, and I guess a proud customer at this time. I would say I was impressed with the presentation. I'm impressed with the results of the company, and very proud that Calgary has kept this company as proud owners for Calgarians. So my question is probably for the board. Mr. Chair, and that's related to recent things that have happened in Edmonton with EPCOR. And EPCOR appears to be spinning off parts of their company to more private ownership type of thing. I would like to know, and I think many of the citizens of Calgary would like to know, whether that same discussion is occurring with regards to Enmax, or are we going to keep it as a wholly owned corporation as it is, or wholly owned subsidiary?
There are no discussions of that nature underway at this time with Enmax, and it is, to my knowledge, we will be continuing upon with the ownership structure we have now.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Yeah, I see it. Go ahead, sir.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jonathan Sundstrom. I have a couple of quick questions. The public notice here states the sole shareholders, Calgary City Council of Enmax. Is that correct? Or
The technical reality is the shares of the company are registered in the name of the mayor of the city, and the mayor uses, as you saw here this morning, the process of a vote of other members of council to guide him in how that share is voted.
Right. So in essence, then, the mayor holds these shares in trust on behalf of the citizens of Calgary?
That's correct.
Okay, because it just seems to be a little bit unclear in that context. Quick question. So Enmax is owned by the city of Calgary, shares held in trust by the mayor, right? Why wouldn't this meeting just be held at city council chambers?
It's a good question. We are a separate, wholly owned subsidiary corporation of the city of Calgary. We don't have the I would say perhaps the status that would be required for us to use city council chambers. We are a company like any other in the marketplace, and this process that you're part of this morning is the standard way that public corporations operate.
You say that you don't have the status, so you're a multi-billion-dollar corporation
Yeah, well,
owned by the city of Calgary. I'm just curious. I mean, small little things add up to save you money, right?
True enough.
Okay.
Thank you for
All right.
the suggestion.
Okay, so my next question here actually involves Your Excellency David Bronconnier. His message regarding Calgary being now soon to be an international city, tied in with the city center core safety plan. John Marr, who's my alderman, and ties in with liability costs to the taxpayers or potential liability costs. And the question here is real straight ahead because I'm a little bit confused with the process following the 311. How many people does it take to change a burnt-out streetlight in the city? I call 311. The call, I presume, is relayed to Calgary Roads and then to Enmax. Is that correct?
Well, 311 ought to do it for you, sir. And I believe that your call is followed by a specific individual whose job it is to make sure that the matter gets resolved. And you're being given a business card right there that will take care of it for any further concerns that you may have. But you shouldn't need to make several calls to several places. 311 should do it.
Right. But 311 does not change the light bulb. So Calgary Roads then goes to Enmax. Is that correct? Because Enmax do change the street lights?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So then my question there pertaining to this. So in the neighborhood I live, which is right down by the Telus Space Science Center, which is at the end of Center Street, LRT, and I did attend the City Center Core Safety Plan at the Glenbow with David Bronconnier speaking there, and we're talking about safety and light and what have you not. And of that particular program there was a 43-page PDF file. On page 23 said that all the lights were implemented or audited and implemented by the city. Now, where I'm at, standing in the street corner, there's a burnt-out street light there at the end of 10th Street and 7th Avenue. Sounds pretty trivial. Actually, no, there's 2 burnt-out street lights. No, actually, there's 3 burnt-out street lights. As, I want to make sure I get his name right, as John Marr is aware, because I sent him an email pertaining to this, within a 1-block radius, there's 9 burnt-out street lights there. This is where women, children, pedestrians, and seniors get off the LRT. Well, the question is, the first reference number I sent to 311, I asked,
No, I'm going to, if you don't mind, perhaps try to create some efficiencies with time here.
Sure.
You've, I would say, picked an astute way to raise the matter of the lights near the Science Center. I'm certain the CEO of the corporation will have the matter looked into before the end of this day. Thank you very much.
79 light bulbs have been changed out.
We'll get to it, and thank you for bringing it to our attention.
My question here is real straight. That's the 311 communication of a city-owned asset. If you want my reference number, Gary, I'll give that to you, please. It's 130374. But what I wanted to know there was that apparently had been complaints of that light October. So 6 months to change a light bulb, but within that area there's 9 light bulbs burnt out. I'm just kind of wondering where on the street does that actually, who's accountable for that? I'm sorry? Jonathan Sundstrom. And I guess what my point is pertaining to that is the whole big picture, chain and link. If we're going to be striving to be an international city, Your Worship, then we should ensure that we at least have lights on that's safe for people, and it's a wholly owned subsidiary. And when I've asked for reference numbers and feedback from Enmax, I've got diddly. So I'd appreciate if that could be followed up in, please.
Will do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there further questions? Excuse me. No, there's someone else who wants to speak. You've already had your turn.
This is regarding the when a customer phones in and they've got to wait a very long time. They're on hold sometimes for 45 minutes. And a lot of people have cell phones today. It's very inconvenient. Is there any way that you can put on a recording that says someone will answer within so many minutes, or leave your name, leave your number, and someone will get back to you?
I'll take that back to the team. Thank you.
Okay. And can I have one more? Okay. I'm a landlady, and had a tenant run into that same problem, but he finally did get through. Also, I took the application, had it filled out for him, but they tell me because they tell me they can't backdate it. So now, on this one case, I'm left paying about $300 worth of utilities for this one tenant. Now multiply that by how many tenants, and it's quite costly. Why can you not backdate it? The tenant has agreed to have it backdated. The tenant knows they were there. They were the user.
Right. I'm not sure of the circumstances of this, but I can have someone look into it. Can you wait there, and we'll get your name and account number if you have it?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see no one at the microphones. You've already had your turn. Thank you, sir. That being the case, I thank you all for attending here this morning, and I'll declare this meeting closed. Thank you very much.